actually just got off speaking at a summit, and I was speaking about reparenting and parenting, and a big topic of that was shame. And so I thought I'd jump on a live here to talk about shame and how and where shame is actually stored in our body, especially for women. So if there's a lot of women who are listening to this, a lot of people who are partners who are women. I'm going to talk to you about how shame coming from our childhood conditioning, shame coming in from our past, shame coming in from maybe things we've done, things we've been exposed to, traumas we've gone through, actually affects ourselves. So last night, actually, on my gauntlet call, which I was really blessed to be able to teach about shame, and I talked about how shame metastases in the body, how basically it manifests and gets stored in the body. Now, shame, and think about your first experience of shame and where shame really came from. You're more than likely, you'll realize if you go back to your childhood, shame probably came from your body, the way you dressed, the way you appeal to certain people, how when you were a teen, if you identify whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're a girl or a boy, or however you identify, when you were young, you probably received a lot of shame in terms of comparison around your body, like your body not looking a certain way, not fitting into dresses a certain way, not being appealing to certain people in a certain way. Now, shame is really how we internally process not suiting or meeting the particular judgments or expectations of people all around us. But what's more important around shame, and here's the difference between shame and guilt. I think it was Brené Brown who talked about it, and the difference, and it's very accurate, is that guilt is meant to be a temporary corrective mechanism. In fact, when they did a brain analysis and body analysis, they found of when people were guilty and feeling shame, they found out that when a person's feeling guilty, there are still parts of your brain that are active enough to let you move and create and make a difference, because guilt is meant to be a temporary corrective mechanism, so you feel that level of like subconscious or conscious activity. When you feel shame, however, your body shuts down. Think about in moments when you've been in a shame spiral, when you're just basically sitting with yourself on the couch, eating ice cream, feeling bad about the fact that you either didn't exercise enough, that maybe you cheated or did something in your relationship, that maybe you haven't been doing well enough in your life. When you take guilt and you keep layering it consistently and continuously, you get into shame. Shame is a state of being. Guilt is a state of like creating some version of an action, of something that you're meant to step into, to doing a corrective behavior. Now, when you feel shame, here's what's really important. Shame gets stored, especially for women, around the hips. Now, there is no direct scientific research correlation, but I've studied a lot of like Eastern physiology and Western psychology. In fact, there's actually an amazing book called Eastern Body, Western Mind, which basically combines how the psychology of the mind influences the body. And the psychologist who wrote the book traveled to India and lived there for many years and studied the chakra system. Now, the second chakra, for those of you who are familiar with chakras or not familiar with chakras, the second chakra is around your waist, so just below your navel. And what it corresponds to is a pleasure center, the pleasure centers of the body. So the second chakra is basically, like I said, just below the navel. So it corresponds to most of our sexual organs that are down there, our reproductive organs. And what it's also closely related to, whether you study metaphysics, you study like the body, your understanding of like yourself and the parts of your body and your energy, it closely relates to the pleasure centers. The second chakra also relates to being very feminine. So the first chakra is the base one, which is masculine, which is about the support and the stability. The second one is about fluidity, creativity, and flow. So it's extremely feminine. It's what's responsible, they say in Eastern principles, it's what's responsible for you being creative, for you being really expressive, for you being able to connect with nature a lot, for you to be able to like verbally express, also like physically express, artistically express, etc. And so especially like when you take the concept of masculinity and femininity, and I'm going to connect this to shame because it's going to be really important for you guys. When you take the concepts of masculinity and femininity is all about creativity. It's all about expression. It's all about playfulness. It's all about being flowy. So one of the best and my favorite examples of masculinity and femininity is take a flag, right? So the Mexico flag, the Mexican flag is like so beautiful and amazing, which in the central part of, in central Mexico, what am I saying central Mexico? In Mexico City, they have in the downtown area, it's a massive flag, one of the biggest flags in the world, and it's waving so beautifully. The colors are amazing. And yet when you think of a flag, and when you've seen an American flag, Canadian flag, like wherever you're from flag, What is a flag without the pole or whatever it's holding on to? It's nothing. And so the flag just like waves in the wind. It'll probably fall and get dirty and torn. What is a pole without the flag? It's boring. It's just like an ugly pole that's just hanging there and provides like no real beauty aesthetic. So a flag and the symbolism of a flag and freedom, wherever else, is only valid when it has the pole and the flag. The pole represents the masculine and the flag represents the feminine. The pole represents the structure, the stability, the support in that moment. The feminine is represented by the flag, the beautiful colors that are waving, which is what everybody's like looking at, loving, and enjoying. So when it comes down to femininity in itself, femininity is a playful, it is a colorful, it is an expressive expression. Both men and women can have femininity, by the way, just letting you know. So it's not only women who have femininity, we have them in different levels. But when it comes to shame, what does shame do when you think about it? Think about where you've been shamed the most in your life, or where you've experienced shame in relationships or wherever. You will find out that you've most likely expressed or felt shame around some sort of like sexual experience. You felt shame around your body type or your like bodily expression, your sexual expression. Those are the biggest areas that you feel shame. Now, where do those deposit? Remember, as I just said, it's around the chakra, which is around sexual expression, creativity, and flow. And so your body tends to store onto those emotions, especially shame, in your hips. So for a lot of people who are, especially, when you think about women, because women are more shamed around their sexuality than men, and this has statistically been proven through time, when women absorb that level of shame around their sexuality, around their expression, they're sitting on so much of like deposits that sit around their waist. Now, you want to know the actual science behind how those deposits sit there through shame? Listen to this. This is neuroscience and neurochemistry, which basically is about the chemicals and the hormones running through your brain and body. When someone goes through a stressful state, when they're triggered, when you go through a stressful state, your body shoots through two chemicals through your body: adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline is the one that's the upper, so it gets you really like excited, gets you to run away from a certain type of prey. And then the second one is cortisol, which is the downer. It's meant to calm you down, but not just calm down. It takes you into like a hibernation mode. The reason these two existed scientifically is because when it came from like prehistoric man or woman, when they were running away from prey or a tiger or a bad thing, they'd run away, which is adrenaline, so it moves it into an aggressive state, and then they'd hide in a cave. And when they hide in a cave, they're meant to just like hibernate and wait for the prey to leave. Now, you don't know how long it's going to take. It may take hours, it may take days. So it shuts off your digestive system, it shuts off all of those things. And what it does is it actually deposits fat layers in your body because it's keeping you there and you're not sure how long you're going to be in there. So it needs to make sure that your body has enough fuel, it can stay warm, it can do all of that. And that's how stress makes us deposit like fat layers in our body. In fact, cortisol, which is the second stress hormone, right? I said there's adrenaline, the upper, cortisol, the downer. Cortisol is secreted and gets attached to fat cells. So fucking crazy. So you can have, if you need more cortisol, you need to be able to start producing more fat and synthesize more fat in your body. And conjunctively, if you have more cortisol running through your body will produce more fat. So in moments when you've been exposed to shame, when people are shaming you around your body, what do you feel? Do you feel good and expansive? No, you feel fucking constricted and shut down. And so when you're feeling that level of being constricted and shut down, you have a lot of cortisol that runs through your body. When you feel shame, I read this research article yesterday, it's amazing, which actually did studies on the body to see which parts of the body are activated when you feel shame or guilt or whatever else. I think I talked about this at the start. But when you feel shame, your body shuts down. It doesn't want you to move. It doesn't want you to do anything. You feel a complete lack of motivation. You feel complete lack of self-worth and self-value, love, all of that stuff. So cortisol is living in your system, depositing fat cells hugely around your waist because that's how it can get you to feel like, oh, I'm going to get hibernated. Now, this is how you can read books like The Body Keeps the Score, Heal Your Body Through Your Mind. Like there's so much of that stuff. I teach psychosomatics, which is the principle of the mind-body connection. And in that, the largest principle is that anything you go through emotionally is stored in your body. Even the good stuff, which is why when you feel really happy and like awake or playing with a puppy or a baby or feel energized at life, just study your body language. Your shoulders will pull back, your chest will go up, your chin will go up because you're expansive and open for the world. On the contrary, when your body is experiencing a very shut down emotion, your shoulders will pull down, everything will go down, and we'll get into more of a victimized stance because your body is afraid. It's it's constricted, it's not expansive. When you go through shame a lot, shame lives in that state like this perpetually. So it's continuously building trauma and being stored in and around your hips. So yesterday, when I was taking my gauntlet students through the powerful process of releasing shame, what we did was a lot of like physical movements to open up your hips. Through yoga, if you've done yoga or any other movements, the hip openers are really good to allow more of that shame to release through your body. So there's like, we did like the frog pose and like different ones. There's some for the first chakra, some for the second. Now, coming back to some of the emotional aspects of shame. Shame is also unfortunately, one of the most powerful ways to control people. So if you think about how, when you were young, right, how your parents tried to motivate you in their own wounded way to do things, they would shame you in certain ways. So for example, if you didn't do well enough at school, they'll say, I'm going to pull you out of school. I'm going to send you to this other like shitty school down the road somewhere else. For me, a lot of it was, if you don't perform, I'm going to send you to boarding school. Actually, it did happen. I ultimately did go to boarding school. But it's like that method of shaming a child or shaming a person into controlling them. And this actually came evolutionarily from tribes way back, if you study sociology and anthropology, where the tribes leaders, to control people from not making their own decisions, doing their own things, would shame them into certain ways by threatening to banish them, etc. Unfortunately, you think of the biggest topic of shame right now, and it's around sex. It's around sexual expression. It's around our bodies. I see this so much, unfortunately, having traveled to so many countries and continents around the world. I see it a lot in North America because there's a lot of like this wounded masculinity shaming the feminine creative expression. Think about, one of my clients shared this on the Gauntlet, where she said her dad would continually, two different stories. One story is her dad, when she was dressing up and like she would wear short skirts or whatever, which a girl who's young is curious and going to be doing. That's what she wants, how she wants to discover her body. Her dad would continuously call her a slut or a whore or, something like that. Now, how fucking wounded is that? And think about the effect that has on a developing girl child who's in her teens. As it is, she feels so fucking scared and threatened in her school, where all of these girls are competing in terms of their body and they're like comparing each other, they're shaming each other for their sizes and this and that. The masculine, I put out a post about this, how a healthy masculine is so important for the development of the feminine. But a girl, when she comes back home, needs to feel the safety of that masculine, that role model father figure who's there and saying, no, I love you the way you are, you're so beautiful, you're important. But if that is now on the opposite, and the father is now shaming the child even more, then this girl internalizes this completely as her body and now says that there's something wrong with me for dressing this way, being this person, having these needs. When a child is 12 or 13, their body automatically develops. A father can do what the fuck he wants, but puberty is going to hit your kids. And so it's important then to understand it and give the child a protective room or space for them to express and be curious and discover themselves while not projecting your own insecurities. But the father who shames a daughter for the way she dresses is like basically taking his own shit from his past, his own wounded story, watching how his prehistoric parents judged his siblings or his wife or whatever else, and he's projecting it onto this little girl. But this is now the first idea of shame around her sexuality that this little girl gets. And as she grows up through life, if she believes that, okay, what I'm exposed to is this wounded masculinity, she'll keep attracting it. So she'll attract partners or people who are very much like her father or like that wounded masculine energy, and she'll continuously feel the shame around her body. She won't attract people who love her body, whatever fucking size it is, but she will attract people who unconsciously keep projecting their shit and shaming her body, which leads to more storing of that shame inside of her. Now, even when we think about our own personal shame, not just around the body, where we absorb our shame. So for me, for example, in my early 20s, and I'm going to be really honest with you guys, I actually thought I was a sex addict. Excuse me. I thought I was a sex addict. And I had basically, I was in a relationship for a long period of time. It was a beautiful, long relationship. But I had cheated on my partner so many times. And I, obviously, in my 20s, I never talked about it. I never really opened up and discussed this with anybody. But when that relationship ended, later on, afterwards, she broke up with me and created massive pain for me. When I got into my late 20s, I looked back on that relationship and I felt so much shame for myself for having cheated on my partner, for having done that, for having slept with somebody else while I was in a relationship. And that basically continues the shame spiral of beating up on ourselves. It's what the ego loves to do to make us feel shittier about ourselves. And It was only when I was able and capable of going back and witnessing who was I in that period of time when I did what I did. Instead of just looking at it and judging it and throwing shame on it and being like, you slept with other people, this is bad, like shame on you, going back and seeing like, why did I do what I did? There's never a logical or justifiable explanation to why you hurt someone. That's not the point. But the point is trying to discover why you were the person who did the hurting. What were you going through that actually made you do what you did? And that absolutely changed my fucking life. In fact, again, on the call last night, I gave my students a therapeutic technique called compassionate inquiry, which allows them to go back into their own lives and witness where it is that they're bringing shame into their own lives and where it is in their own world that they're trying to be able to discover how they're beating up on themselves. Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.